seconds to the podcast, it's all over. We are now live though, so no more conversations about terrorism.
What a
all
start.
right, so we are here, episode 256, season finale. It's been a long one this year, boys. Been a lot going on. We do have more of a structure than ever for these first and last podcasts of the year that you guys are probably pretty well aware of by now. So for those listening, we'll be going over our player of the season first and foremost. And then we'll be covering each of our 2 best moments of the season. So this can be games, goals, breakout players, individual performances, off the pitch moments. If you manage to like keep a bottle top one time when you bought a Fanta at the desk, like that could be it. Whatever it is, will be there. And then 2 worst moments as above. I have a sad feeling there'll be a few of those as well this year. And then we'll go on to the player assessment piece. We'll talk about players we want to move on, players that or positions of need, really, regardless of whoever is at the helm next season. Players we think benefit most from losing Roberto. Players we think benefit the least from losing Roberto. Then we'll talk about managerial rumors, probably peppered throughout this entire podcast, really, because that is obviously the gigantic elephant in the room. The elephant is probably slightly more attractive than Steve Cooper at this stage as well. And then we'll also talk
the elephant man goals. In the room.
Yeah, next season's goals, hopes, dreams, worries, and then we'll probably end on a bit of Euro 2024 chat as well, with the possibility that we're going to have almost half a dozen players at this tournament. So we'll talk about that and really how it's going to scarily possibly be intrinsically linked to our managerial search, possibly going forward. So first of all, it's been a few weeks. How are you? We've got Robin, Adam, and Craig here, so we're all in attendance today. How is everybody doing?
All right.
I'm just glad it's over. Is that bad to say?
Yeah, that's how I feel. No, I did say, when our season tailed off and we had those 6 or 7 games left to play, I did say at the time I wish we could just play them all in like a week so that we could just finish the thing.
Do a little weekend tournament or something.
Yeah,
just
do the whole lot.
Out.
Like a kid, like a kid's birthday party style football tournament, right? Just get the whole thing done.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm very ready to take this Brighton shirt and put it back in the drawer and get the England one on with sort of butchered flag on it and be disappointed by Southgate like that. I'm now in that frame of mind.
Ready to be hurt again.
I'm ready to be hurt again. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. It felt like the season finished a month and a half ago, right? So this feels like a bit of a retrospective more than anything. But good, Josh, how are you?
Yeah, we're starting upbeat, guys. So trust me, the energy will pick up. Don't worry, because we'll start to remember the odd couple of good bits of the season. But I will say before we dive into this properly, there are a lot of things that we can trick ourselves into being excited about, because we are going to have a new manager, we are going to have new players. It's a bit of a new dawn for the club, whether it's bad or good. So at least we've got that. We're not going to be bored.
Well, yeah, exactly, right. This is gonna be a busy summer, for better or for worse, right? Like the wrong managerial appointment, and it's like the busiest, most awful summer ever, where players are like, "I'm absolutely not playing for this absolute drip of a man," or it's like, yeah, like we're not gonna sell players, and we're gonna strengthen in like a really exciting way. We've got a cool manager that looks like he's gonna do something different. Blah 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 blah. Who knows? We'll have those conversations maybe next week. Maybe 4 weeks from now, maybe on the opening day of the season. I don't know. Like at this point, it seems pretty clear that McKenna was number 1, and after that, the vaunted list that Barber's talked about ad nauseum. Not as long as we thought. So let's get down into the positives first. Let's do that. Let's talk positives and talk player of the season. So obviously Pascal Gross won, I think, players player and fans player for the season throughout for the club's awards. There were 2 pretty obvious runners-up for him. I'm curious to know if any of you differ from the Pascal Gross option. If you do go for number 2 or number 3 in their rankings, or whether you've got a total out there like option of yourself. And Adam, if you say Ansu Fati, I'm kicking you.
It's hard to look past him.
Yeah, let's start with you, Craig. Player of the season.
Yeah, it was boring, but I had Gross as the number one. I did have Pedro as second. I think just with the first season that he had playing for us as well, I thought he did really well, and especially in Europe, he was still one of the top scorers, even though we crashed out in the quarters. So those are my 1 and 2. I didn't really have a third, to be fair. So I'm probably just going to leave it at 1 and 2.
Adam.
Well, look, I think it probably is gross just in terms of overall performances, but I think when I saw your notes on this, we could talk about breakout players and all that type of thing. So I kind of want to trend in that direction a little bit, because we can't look past Jan-Paul Van Hecke's uptick this year and the improvement that we saw from him. And then Adingra really made his mark this season, especially with the AFCON performances, and then the value that he brought to this team with the injuries that we had at the wings. So if you can sort of look past João Pedro's goals, especially in the European competitions, and then Pascal Gross's overall performances, those two for me have stood out.
Robin?
João Pedro, number one. Purely because the best moments of the season came from his boot, effectively. Whether you're going to look at Euro goals, whether you're going to look at goals against Palace, hat-tricks in the Cup, the best moments came from him, I think. Second, Pascal, clearly, the kind of metronome who's just the glue that holds everything together. And then third, Van Hecke, I think. I think those three are probably quite a distance away from everybody else. If you're going for young player, I mean, Van Hecke kind of could be in that category as well. I'm with Adam. I think you probably land on Adingra. Given how much there was that period when he came back from AFCON when everyone else was seemingly injured, and he effectively carried our attacking threat on his own for a period of about a month, seemingly. So yeah, I think he's probably the young player. But yeah, Pedro, considering first season at the club, didn't look like his first season at the club, is probably the best way of describing it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think those three were exactly what were on the Brighton end of season awards: Gross, Van Hecke, and Pedro. And yeah, I think for me it was Gross as well. That's who I voted for in the little website thing. So yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about Pascal Gross. Looks like he again is reiterating his desire to leave. He did it last year, stayed on for another year. It certainly doesn't seem to be a desire to leave because he's unhappy here. It's a desire to leave because he would be happier home, right? And it seems to be something we see with German players a lot. Seems to be a German player trend that a lot of these German lads want to go home and finish in their home country. You don't see that so much with some of the other nations, but it seems to be a carrying trend for those guys. Do you think now is the best time for Pascal to go in a period of transition like this, or do you think it's almost imperative for the club to try and keep him one more year to keep that consistency, right? Like it's like when you've had someone move away and you've got rid of one manager, you bring in another, like people like Dunk, Gross, those who know the culture of the club. Lallana gone too, right? Like that's a big loss dressing room wise. Keeping your Dunks, your Grosses, your Welbecks, that's obviously really important. Do you think we should do everything we can to keep him for the year, or do you think that we're really well positioned to be actually this is the perfect time to allow you to go? And from what I've been reading, it sounds like we're anticipating essentially making our money back on him. And at his age, that's a hell of a bit of business, really, isn't it? What are your thoughts on Pascal Gross and his future, given that two of us have him as number one and one of us has him as number two, and Adam has obviously name dropped him as an obvious option as well?
I mean, I think ideally you'd keep him for the reasons that you've mentioned. But on the flip side, I also kind of feel like he's probably one of the few players in the squad who you kind of owe it to him, right? If he wants to go back and have some meaningful years in Germany. Because what is he, 32, 33? something like that. So he's probably got a couple of years, right, in the Bundesliga.
He's 32.
I feel like kind of given
He'll be 33 in
he's
a week and a half.
that he's seemingly kind of held our Premier League status together for 7 years at various times. I kind of feel like if he wants to go, I think we should give him a pat on the back and let him go. But I think footballing wise, you'd keep him absolutely. But it's the question of, he's proper Premier League legend for us, right? So it feels like it would be nice if he genuinely wants to go and do something else. I'd let him go.
I think we're boned if he leaves. Actually, I think we're absolutely sort of screwed. But both on and off the pitch reasons, as you sort of highlighted, you just described before we got onto this conversation. Pascal Gross Player of the Year. He's the glue that sort of has held everything together. Well, that's quite bad then if that goes, isn't it? And it's not just that'd be bad that he goes. Footballing wise, he was obviously fantastic last year. Clearly very impactful for the dressing room, the coordination of everything. And also, we don't have anyone to play in his bloody position either. The backup to Pascal Gross right now in central midfield is
Jack Hinchelwood.
Jakob Moder, who
probably
didn't actually look good really at any point last season after coming back from injury. Not to say
he's
player though.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I think it's a classic question of it will be very obvious whether it's a good decision when the transfer window closes. Like, I think it's one of those questions that's really difficult to answer now. Because if he goes and we replace him really badly, then obviously it's a terrible decision to let him go. But if you let him go and then you bring in someone in his position who is
Dewsbury Hall,
for instance, then you'd go fair enough. Like, I think it's really difficult to answer without knowing who's likely to come in. I think it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think I'm more. Where are we going to get 15 goal contributions from a year consistently at a price level? You take a look at Dewsbury Hall or something like that. Great player, but is he guaranteed to get you 10 assists a year, or is he guaranteed to play every game that Gross does? Is he able to do what he does? I just think for the price range and for what we already have, I think it's imperative that we try to keep him. And I think I also agree with Robin that we owe it to him to facilitate a move when he really needs it. But I think this year we need him because and we'll come on to this later on in the pod, but I think we need someone that's going to create stuff and we need someone that's going to score goals. And be the glue, because we've lost Lallana. The likelihood of losing some of the other locker room leaders might be quite high as well, just with the amount of turnover. So you're asking whether we should let our player of the season go. It's like absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. I hope we do everything we can to keep him. I think obviously it depends on the manager as well, right? Like, we get like a top quality manager in. I don't think he'll have. I think he'll want to go still, but like he'll have less reservations.
This is what he's got a year. He's got a year left, hasn't he?
He has, yeah.
And I'd rather let that run out.
And I think that's 3 million quid or whatever.
Yeah,
it's not
that's it, right? And you go, okay, you can join Frankfurt next year. You can agree it on January 1st, 2025, if you like, but like one more year, just while we figure things out, because clearly this managerial search hasn't gone the way it should have been.
I don't feel like he'd be the kind of guy who's really going to rock the boat. It doesn't feel like that. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm wild.
Well, he made the same noises last year and he didn't. So like you would assume that you're right because he didn't do it last summer.
I think the national team call up might actually potentially be our downfall in that regard, because he's going to go and, depending on how Germany do as well, right? He's going to go to the Euros. He's going to have a great time with his countrymen. And then he might have this feeling.
It's in Germany as well, isn't it?
Right. He's going to get back. He's going to be like, oh, I want that.
So do we basically want Germany to crash out really quickly?
Well, we always want that to happen anyway, don't
especially now, like he gets sent off or something. The only intel we have, Josh, from our other WhatsApp group, I don't know if you read this, is that we happen to know someone in the WhatsApp group who rents his house to Pascal Gross. It's the same house he's lived in for the whole time he's been at the Albion, and he's signed a lease for another year.
Yeah, he has. He signed. Yeah, I
So
saw
that's
that.
the weirdest. That's the weirdest of kind of granular intel.
Oh,
But I
is
guess
that?
maybe.
Wow, breaking news.
But maybe on his wage.
Hopefully he doesn't break the lease.
Maybe on his wage, it doesn't really matter, right? If he's having to pay whatever it is, 2-3 grand a month for a house that he's not living in,
It
it's not
definitely
going to break the
doesn't
bank, is
matter.
it? So yeah, I think it's a classic kind of sit on the fence, but I think it's so difficult to, especially without knowing who the manager is. I think it's so difficult to make a call on it.
Can you imagine though? Like, go back after the season that we had last year, not this recent one, the previous one, right? Probably the most anticipatory. Like after that season with De Zerbi, we came into this season European football. Oh my god, the world is our oyster. Imagine if you turned around and said 12 months later, you've lost De Zerbi, you've lost McAllister, you've lost Caicedo, you've lost Pascal Gross.
It's textbook Albion. It's literally, it's just, I wouldn't have been surprised at all.
By the way, Ansu Fati was terrible. Like, that's almost worst case scenario, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've replaced none of them and shown no signs of currently replacing any of them, including the guy who runs the show.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's a little bit sad.
Yeah, so no, I don't want him to go. I really don't want him to go. No.
All right, well, that's good. We're all on the same boat, basically. We need to stay, so please do for one more year. I think it's obvious. Just let the contract run down. We have no interest in getting a fee for you. Like,
yeah,
just go.
Hold it a year.
Yeah. So yeah, let's get back onto positives then, because now we're all sad about Pascal Gross possibly going. 2 best moments of the season. So this can be games, goals, breakout player performances. We talked a little bit about the rise of Van Heck. Stuff like that can be on this one. Individual performances, off the pitch moments, whatever it is, you can add it into this section here. So let's start with you, Robin. Your 2 best moments of the season.
I've gone for kind of fan enjoyment one. I've gone Marseille home and away. That's my 2. I mean, Marseille away, first European away game ever. Covered this in depth at the time, but like the most ridiculous atmosphere I think I'll ever experience at football anywhere. For a start, just bonkers, like ears ringing for about a week afterwards. It was genuinely, I don't think I've fully recovered from it. And then you take in the 2-0 down after 20 minutes, and then you think, here we go, classic Albion. And then you get the stereotypical Pascal Gross, goal to drag us back into it. Last minute penalty, João Pedro, all of that stuff. It's just as an event to be at as a fan, just madness, really. I think that will. I mean, I joked a few times. I just thought genuinely the European campaign would be the pinnacle of the Albion. Full stop. I think it probably will be. But that moment where you just go, this is a Stade Velodrome, right? This is Marseille. This is a proper European powerhouse. Moment is just it was madness. And then the home game with obviously João Pedro's goal at the end. And at that point you go, without hindsight, wherever you looked at it, and you go, we have just topped. We're in with a chance here, right? Like, we don't look out of place. We just topped a group in the Europa League, and he just had the whole bedlam of that lot. Again, we've unpacked that goal from João Pedro. It was a brilliant team goal. Even if you just look at it as a goal, it was terrific. But then after that, you've got, João Pedro's in the crowd, De Zerbi's in the crowd. Gilmore's just so knackered that he's just, punching the ground. There's so much to unpack with it. Those 2 games were just brilliant. Probably honourable mentions Ajax away, just because it was bonkers in the same way. Just go, it's Albion going to Ajax away and recording the most routine 2-0 win you're probably ever going to see, which is just, it's madness on itself. And then probably Palace at home would be those, those 4 games are probably the ones I'd look at.
It's a good list. The Marseille one's obvious. I think a lot of people listening who went to either of those games will be nodding along thoroughly for those. So I think that's pretty fair. Adam.
Well, I feel like Robin just stole them all.
Sorry.
Can I just say yes? um, I'll go back a little bit further, and again, I sound like a broken record with this, but I'll say one of the highlights of the season was before the season kicked off. The signing of Ansu Fati was monumental before he kicked the ball, and I cannot think of a moment in recent memory where it felt like we were fully there.
Massive.
It was unprecedented and historic in terms of the capture, and it felt like this was going to be it. Like this, what are we doing now? What is this club? We're about to go and play a European competition. We've just signed a world-renowned player. Like, this is a new evolution for this club. For me, that was, remember how the fan base felt during that moment. Like, everyone was absolutely on cloud nine. And then unfortunately he played. But that to me was a highlight. And yeah, look, we have to talk about the European competition. I think that Ajax game was big. And I know the away one was big, but I think it was sort of the home one as well, right? Because the opening night against Athens was obviously disappointing. Then you had the draw against Marseille. We were nervous. We were real nervous after those two games about, is this gonna spark out quick? And then you had those two legs against Ajax when suddenly everything just turned on its head. I think that was a big moment as well in the season where you suddenly felt, all right, we're back in this. We're going to make this happen. And obviously culminated in that game against Marseille at the end where it properly sealed it. But that turnaround was massive because that was a low point before those Ajax games.
I think that's entirely fair. Craig, would you like to go next or me?
You go next. Go on.
All right, cool. Yeah, one of them obviously just got mentioned. Robin mentioned it, but for me, obviously my first full year back at home and Palace at home stands out for me. Just a comprehensive destruction, and obviously the hat trick was sealed off, and it was literally like within touching distance of me. His like disgustingly cold throat slit that he did that got cut from Match of the Day because it was not seen as appropriate. Like, was just the most cold shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, João Pedro will forever be a hero for just dismantling them like that. Incredible atmosphere, great day. Like, what a result, love it. I'm surprised, Adam, that you didn't have your training session that you went to in New Jersey as one of your highlights, honestly.
Yeah. Big
just
moment.
Because there was so much hope, right? And you got to see a couple of folks and stuff like that. But I think
my highlights were all hope, as you saw. They were all about hope.
Yeah, like when you mentioned the Ansu Fati one, like I didn't even think about it, but like yeah, like I remember like how buzzing we all were. Like the WhatsApp chat was going mental. When I got out of our WhatsApp chat, there was like 44 messages in another one. There was 30 in another one, and half of them weren't even like Brighton fan chats. Like it's just people, like everybody going mental over it. Like it was crazy. But I think for me, even though we know what happened was awful, like for me, like getting to go to Rome was like also a big one. Like the result, the 90 minutes of football aside, everything about it, like
it was
my only
trip, right?
It was the only one I was able to do, like for various reasons. Either selling out before I could get it, or just money wise, like I couldn't do some of them. But for Rome, like got to do it, got to go there, got to live the dream, got to see us get absolutely battered. It is what it is. Like I've been to worse places than the Stadio Olimpico. Like right, like if I can do it, if I can deal with us getting hammered at Carlisle, like it's a privilege to go watch it happen at the Olimpico. So it was brilliant. The fact like the atmosphere was great. It was so fun. Like it was just such a good time. So like for me, like that whole Rome trip was just absolutely mental. Even though the result was an absolute bag of shit, it's up there with my top two for sure. Craig, what do you got?
Slim pickings now that we've got three people in front. I was going to say the first one was the 60 seconds of the Palace game where we went from 1-0 to 3-0. especially that sort of third goal, and just from a moment perspective, not from obviously the game was amazing too, but having 2 goals in like 60 seconds, like it was sort of done and dusted at that point, and it was like, this is magic, right? That doesn't happen very often. I also had Matoma's goal of the season as well, and it just makes me miss Matoma, just in general. But just such a quintessentially Matoma goal, and it was so good. And that's why it gets replayed every time it's wild. And then for me as well, I don't have the privilege to go to all of these games like you did and go to Europe and stuff like that. But I was able to we watched the Newcastle game with Fatboy Slim here in Chicago, and that was very cool. So getting to sort of spend that with him and spend it with the other guys in Chicago as well was really fun. And the result definitely helped as well. One of the rare Evan Ferguson appearances of this year. So yeah, I hoped it with 3, but I think they're all pretty good.
I forgot all about the Fatboy Slim one. To be fair, like that's a really good one. Like,
yeah, it was really cool. I think he was just like, I think he was playing a gig like later that night, and yeah, he hit up the Chicago Seagulls Twitter thing and just said, "Where are you going to be?" It came very quickly, but yeah, shout out to those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Mitoma's goal was also up there on my list for me. Like, probably one of the best goals I've ever seen live. Like, he just kept going and going. And
It's
going.
not my goal of the season, by the way.
What is
Purvis.
the Spurs one or the Stoke one?
Spurs one.
Because he did 2 back-to-back.
I mean, they're fairly similar. Yeah. No, I mean, but I like
The
those.
Spurs one was better.
Those
yeah.
banger goals for me.
Yeah, it's kind of different. It's the different categories, isn't it? Because you get like those goals we just go like those proper old school net busters. Do you remember that show?
Oh,
If
yeah.
anyone's old enough to remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, like those proper goals. There's something. I'm with you. There's something about that. We just go. If this didn't go in, you're looking like a fatality in the crowd, right? Like that's the territory you're in terms of like power.
The goal that never was, right, in Potter's last game, the McAllister goal against Leicester.
Oh yeah, that amazing. Yeah, that
Mhm.
proper. Yeah, that
I
kind
still
of
can
stuff.
see it in my head now, and it didn't even get allowed. Like, that's how
Yeah,
good it
it's
was.
just- it's
But
dreadful,
that
isn't it?
Purvis goal was that put
Yeah.
us 3-0 up against Spurs, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, he'd just come back from injury. No one. You have that 2-0 lead against a side like Spurs, and you think, well, how are we going to screw this up then?
Well,
And then he goes and
tried,
does
didn't
that.
we?
We did try at the end.
even
We
from
really did.
4.
But thankfully, yeah. And it was, it felt
It's a proper
felt
banger, didn't
big
it?
to that goal. It was an absolute banger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's snake draft this bitch and go back the other way around on our 2 worst and start with Craig.
Just 2?
Just two. I know this has been the majority of your morning out of listing these specific ones.
Just,
but,
I stayed up late last night.
just the 2.
I've got the first one just from a butterfly effect. The Solly March injury, I think it's pretty bad. I think that kind of messed everything up for us because we were heavily reliant on Solly March being available and being the player that De Zerbi made him or got him to be and play at that level. So when he was out for the rest of the season, we never really had anything else. You're playing, and we said how good Adingra was, and that's credit to him. But you're playing wingers not on the right side. You're trying to fit square pegs in round holes and trying to figure out what we can do as opposed to what we want to do. And it just felt like it sort of fell apart after that. And at the time, I don't think we realized the magnitude of it, but after the hindsight and with the season review, I feel like that's pretty bad in what we saw for the rest of the season. And then the last one is just, we spoke about it earlier, the petering out of the season, right? 6 points in 10 games. We just went naff and really just fell apart. And it was dismal watching. It really was. I mean, we had a couple of draws there. We won against Aston Villa in the last minute, and that's great. But on the whole, it was turgid viewing. And it really was a difficult end to the season where we were happy, again, just to let it go, right? Just play all of these in one go. I don't care. And that's not a way to watch football. So that's one of mine as well.
One win in 10, as you say. One win in 10 in the last 10 games. And when we looked at that schedule, I think we all thought, wow, this is going to be rough. Didn't
Yeah.
think it was going to be that rough.
No, and just a reminder that current second favourite Steve Cooper was sacked for 1 in 13. So that could be one of our 2 bad next season. But I'll go next, obviously. I think my first one is, well, pretty similar to what you were going to say, Craig, really, in the loss of Solly March. And it like that, the beginning of that injury crisis, and just the way it then never seemed to get better. And we didn't even get our like massively hench physios on the pitch for a bit of meme lauding. Like there wasn't even that. Like it felt like a never ending like supply chain of injuries. And like every time we were like, Mitoma's back next week. Like Mitoma started, he was great, and then Adingra got a knock for 3 weeks, like in the same game. Like or like Purvis came back, scored a banger at Spurs, and then immediately did his calf, and like was never seen again. Like that is like probably one that all of us will probably have on the list somewhere of like just demoralizing. But I think my other one was the period of time, 3 games between Wednesday the 28th of February and Thursday the 7th of March was the most depressing time as an Albion fan, which ironically also contains one of my 2 best moments because it was in Rome. But being at Wolves and being in Rome, I didn't get to go to Fulham because they sold out before it got to me. Because otherwise I would, even if we got beat 3-0, because I love Craven Cottage. But that stretch of games effectively ended our season, even back in March. And looking back on it, we can say with absolute certainty that was the death knell of the season, and it then turned into a let's just get this over and done with. We were knocked out of the FA Cup on the 28th of February. We were knocked out of the Europa League on the 7th of March, and the 3-0 defeat against Fulham was the one that really checked off the box. I think there was a lot of results that weekend that went in a way that really knocked us out of contention for any European place, while also having Liverpool simultaneously get blasted by Atalanta, which meant that the position went away for us in the coefficient. So not just with our results going horribly wrong in that 3-game stretch, but all of the things conspiring European-wise that meant that even that extra spot in the Euros were gone. Like that stretch of 9 days or whatever it was stands out as just that moment where it was like any hope that was left over was just like, I now don't care anymore and I want this season to be over. Adam, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some good ones. Weird way of describing it. Yeah, that stretch was horrid, wasn't it? I honestly, I think the Rome away was probably the lowest point of the season because it was sort of the end run of that period you described, right? And it was the dream crusher because you're like, okay, Prem isn't shaping up that great. Come on though, maybe. Oh no, it's gone.
I think we said exactly that too. Like,
yeah,
it was a dodgy lineup for Fulham. Yeah, we're at the FA Cup, but
nope. And then we got taken out back and shot. I would say there's a couple of honourable mentions I'll throw out. That West Ham game in game week, game week
that
3.
0-0, right?
No, the 3-1 we lost at home.
Yeah.
That was just horrendous because we start, as you know, all the hopes. 4-1 at Luton opening day, 4-1 against Wolves away second week, and then West Ham just came in and just played bastard football, and then we got undone. You kind of felt, oh god, is this what could happen? But I would say for me, outside of the Rome, the lowest point was that last 9 days of September 2023, because we had the opening loss to AEK Athens at home, bleak. Sure, we beat Bournemouth, but who cares? We went out of the cup against Chelsea, and then we got beaten 6-1 by Villa. That was
it's not great.
Not a great 9 days for the club.
No.
I would say that was particularly big. Of course, you know, I'll bring up Ansu Fati again. Why not?
That 6-1 defeat was so bad that it didn't even come into my head as one of my 2. And I attended that.
He blocked it.
That's how bad it was.
On my list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Not good. I mean, it's been some dreadful ones, haven't they?
I mean, you could call. I mean, maybe I don't want to steal this from you, Robin, but Luton 4-0 was pretty bleak, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was bleak as well. I mean, I've mentioned, but to be honest, the 2 that I wrote down, the number 1 was the Solly injury. same as Craig. It's just like, such an important player in attack and in defense. So, I mean, that was number one. And my number two was that Roma Roma Wolves week. I mean, it kind of writes itself. I mean, the kind of slightly controversial one that I'll chuck in as the worst moment of the season, I think, is De Zerbi leaving.
Yeah,
100%.
100%.
I don't think it's the right decision. I still don't think it's the right decision. If there was a decision made, obviously, we don't know. And that's not even with the hindsight, obviously, not having appointed a manager and had the merry-go-round. Like at the time, I don't think it was right. So I think that's the worst. That's the worst moment, because when you're looking at it, there's no one. Obviously, we'll come on to managerial bits in a bit in more detail. But yeah, I don't think it's the right decision. I don't think if either party has made a mutual decision, I don't think it's the right decision for either party. Because I don't think we're going to find a better manager, and I don't think De Zerbi's going to find a better owner to work for. I don't think he's going to find many owners who will, tear up their policy. And you look at Chelsea, you look at Man United, you look at any of these big jobs, their recruitment operates in much the same way, which is that they have a plan, and they're not going to like someone coming in saying this is how I want to do it. So, yeah, that's my worst.
That's all.
Hard to disagree, honestly, with that. Yeah, it felt like one of those ones where you've got the two friends in a relationship, and you're like, oh, that's a nice relationship, and then they just break up, and you go, I get it, but I wish that didn't happen.
Yeah, and it feels like you didn't give it enough time. It feels like it's just a little bit like you've. And do you know what the problem is? Is once it's done, neither party wants to lose the face of going. Behind closed doors, you want them to just almost call each other and go,
yeah, come on,
that was
patch it up.
That was a dreadful decision, wasn't it? How do we get out of this?
Yeah.
And obviously, when you're playing that out in front of the world's media, that's fairly difficult to do, right? There's no real scenario in which, even if they're both sitting at home, right, at the moment, cartoon speech bubbles, right? Tony's just sitting there, weeping with this image of Roberto knee sliding, down the touchline. That kind of no one's going to pick up the phone and be like, this is a terrible idea. How do we backpedal from this? But I would be I don't know, probably wildly, I would be amazed if either party doesn't harbour a tiny little bit of regret.
It's an amicable divorce that occurred for valid reasons on both sides, but we're the kids.
Basically, that's where it is, isn't it? And you're basically going, why? Basically, we've had holidays at Disney World for the last couple of years, and now we're going to Skegness, right? That's that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, that's what I feel. It feels like. Yeah,
it does feel like, and you've just got used to you've just got used to your mum bringing you home really nice new clothes every week, right? And now she's just rocked up with a carrier bag from British Heart Foundation with some jeans that don't fit you very well.
That's far too vivid.
But you know what I mean? It's that's where we are, right?
And she's just fired up her Hinge account.
Oh,
and she's
Who's
just
this
bringing
guy?
food. Yeah, basically all the people at the pub that you used to just go and avoid.
This is Steve.
He's
not good
you're now
looking, is
coming
he?
downstairs and he's sitting on the sofa and you're just going, do you know what? I'm moving out. I might be 12, but I'm moving out.
You're hearing rumors around town that she's she's gone for a drink with Steve.
What's
and
Potter
she's
in
considering
this?
even
Is the ex
Potter's the PE teacher from school, right?
the university boyfriend?
But basically, he's you come home and he's your PE, he is legitimately your PE teacher from school.
He's the PE teacher that left school because he had a midlife crisis, bought a BMW,
basically,
and got a 25-year-old girlfriend, and then realized that, and then she binned him off for everything, and all he's got left is the Beamer.
Yeah, basically, that's where he is. There we go.
Meanwhile,
that's not a meta. That's not a scenario I was expected to go down, but
It's a 3 Series cabriolet, and the cabriolet's called Bruno.
Yeah, that's basically it. So there you go.
Meanwhile, Daddy De Zerbi is insisting everything's all right on his end, but you've definitely seen him down an antidepressant or two as well.
Yeah, you have. Yeah,
all is not well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's at the pub at 3 p.m.
I feel like there's a lot of millennials from broken homes here, just shaking in their car right now.
Yeah,
that's a projection.
Yeah, he basically thought, he was going to be in with any of the really nice mums from the school run, right? And they've basically all binned him off, and now he's like, was
Yeah,
this
in
really
the
a good
American
decision?
world, he had his eye on about 6 soccer mums, and like none of them are interested. Like,
Yeah, they kind of displayed enough interest that he took this as a serious, like, I need to move on. But actually, when it comes down to it, none of them want to leave their husbands. for
Yeah,
it,
they
right?
both thought the
That's-
grass was greener,
like,
and they've
that's where
then
it
gone, "Oh,
is.
hold on, maybe it was quite good." But,
Yeah.
Anyway,
equivalent-
we've gone
the
quite long
equivalent
on
of,
this, haven't we? Was
yeah,
this on the
that's
list of things we were
waitresses
talking
flirting
about?
with you.
Yeah, it started with the worst
Uh,
moment of the season, right? That's where it spiraled from.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
move on, because like
It went heavy into therapy, didn't it?
yeah, we
Yeah,
have. I feel better for
let's-
it though.
Let's move on. And let's talk about players we want moving on. Funnily enough, is next up. So we're now in a period of change and shedding our skin, and some of those are actual human players that we don't want to be here anymore. So we've got the squad list in front of us, I assume, for most of us.
Yeah.
Which ones stand out to you? Let's go through each position as they stand. Goalkeeper. In the goalkeeper room, are you happy to keep all 3 as they stand, presuming that the new guy will presumably not have lost his absolute damn mind and like have Verbruggen 1, Steele 2? We're pretty sure that Steele is going to be okay being a number 2 unless someone comes in and tries to take him.
He is a bit
for
number
reasons.
2, isn't he? So yeah, it works out.
Yeah.
Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Happy with that.
Who's the
Yeah.
third keeper? Is it Rushworth? Because he was on loan, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Or
I
we
mean,
have McGill?
McGill's out of
Who do you
contract,
want?
isn't he? I think.
You can't have Rushworth as number 3.
No, you can't. And
Oh.
similarly, don't you can have
Mm.
Beadle as number 3 either.
So
Someone
you
else as number 3. I mean, is there someone? I mean, we seem to grow goalkeepers, right? Somewhere at the back at the training ground just seems to have just these kind of wallflowers growing all the time. So I imagine there's another goalkeeper we can just.
We've
roll out
got
to be number 3.
Killian Cahill, Hugo Fisher. We've
We've got Rio Ferdinand's son is in the academy as a goalkeeper, isn't he?
Killian
Stephen
Cahill.
Hall. Yeah, Stephen Hall.
Oh, still,
and Tommy
he's
Reed.
the Australian guy with the mullet, isn't he? Yeah, he can come in as number 3.
Yeah, there you go.
We're bringing him straight in as number 3. No worries.
We have Lorenz Ferdinand in the under 18s as well. So yeah,
plenty of goalkeepers. Fine, let's not.
We literally have 6 of them on the books.
Yeah, it's all right.
21 and under 18s, and Beadle and Rushworth out on loan. So
we're absolutely fine. They can rotate number 3, right? They can all do a month
for the season. Yeah, basically. Yeah. All right, bit more meaty then. Defenders. Who are we looking at offloading here? I'm going to list all of them, and then you can name the ones that you would like to discuss. Tariq Lamptey, Igor Adam Webster, Lewis Dunk, Valentin Barco, Van Heck, Estepinian, and Joel Veltman.
I mean, I've got it's basically that right back position, right? So I've got enormous question marks over both Veltman and Lamptey. I mean, Veltman the last 6 weeks of the season he's just dropped off. I don't know whether it's just injuries and age have caught up with him, but he didn't look like the same player in the last couple of months of the season. But
this is players you want moving on, regardless.
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically, regardless who the manager is, I think what I'm saying is, we'll come on to it in a sec, like, we need a right back. We said that a year ago, that we needed a right back, right? We still need a right back. If we get in the mythical first choice right back, we're not going to, I don't think we need both Veltman and Lamptey. So I think there's a question mark over both of them. And I would probably get rid of Lamptey and probably keep Veltman. But it's a toss of a coin. So one of those two would go, as far as I'd look at it. The rest of the defence, given upheaval elsewhere, I'd like another centre back, but I'm not particularly wedded to getting rid of. I didn't think I'd ever be in a situation where I'm like, I'm good on Webster. I am actually good on Webster, to be honest. I think the rest of them are fine. There's other more meaty issues to deal with than defence, I think.
I don't know. I think I'd clear house a lot more than you would.
I know you will. That's why I was wondering what you were about to roll off with. And I can see your face about to just be like, him.
Yeah,
I'm trying to be realistic in the bounds of what we're probably likely to do and where we're gonna
doesn't have to
put
be
money in.
just people you want to see gone.
Barco's not a left back to me either. For me, he's a left back in the same way Trent Alexander-Arnold's a right back. he's elsewhere for me. So I don't think we've got a left back outside of Pervis Estupiñán. So I would actually argue left back is more of an urgent need than right back, but they're both urgent needs. I think we're probably at the point where the Lamptey experiment is over, and we kind of have to call that a day, which is sad. And then centre back wise, look, unless Webster has a renaissance, having 2 good games in a season is not enough to play in this team, in my opinion. You know, you've got Duncan Van Hecke. We saw a decent chunk of Igor, but didn't light the world on fire. There's also been noise about him going back to Serie A, potentially for Milan. And I wouldn't be shocked if he went. But really, I'm only really looking at keeping 5 of that group: Estupiñán, Dunk, Van Hecke, Hinshelwood, and Veltman. If we lost all the rest, I wouldn't lose sleep. I'd be a bit sad about Igor, but I'd understand it.
But we're not considering Barco as part of that group, correct?
I'm not considering Barco part of that, no.
That's what I thought. Okay, cool. Craig, are you alive? Are you back?
Yeah, technical difficulties, but I'm here.
All right, you can lead off in the next.
Are we still talking defenders?
Just defenders. Yeah. Still,
Right.
just
Okay.
Still talking
Sorry.
defenders.
I agree with Robin. I think Lamptey, if anyone, if you're bringing a right back in, one needs to kind of go. And as much as I love Lamptey, I think it's probably time.
Are we all Lamptey out? Josh, are you Lamptey out?
I have a
Not like we're cheering Lamptey out, but as in like yeah.
He's still so young. I think that he needs to go on loan to a championship side and go find himself. Like doing Aaron Rodgers, but in the championship. Like go to his cave, be it Stoke, Huddersfield. No, because they're gone, aren't they? Like whoever. Go to the championship. Go to some crap mid-table team, Watford, whatever. Like if you don't want to go too far away, like go wherever. But go to one of those teams. Play right wing. Play right back. Play right wing. I don't know. Play wherever you get put by the manager that decides what your life is going to be from now on as a professional footballer, and see what you make of it. And if he can't do it, then get rid. Because he's so young, I'm still kind of reluctant. Like it's sunk cost fallacy probably, but like we've had him for so long and he's still such a baby. Like I would hate to get rid of him fully.
It's just the
I think he
injury
could
thing,
do with
isn't it?
going away. Well, that's what I mean. Like
if you take
it's
the
a bit
injury
like
thing out,
Sarmiento.
right? If you take the injury thing out, it's a wildly different decision. Like, if you take the injury decision out, like I'm kicking Veltman out the door, like of the 2. If you take the injury out, but then the other thing is, if you take the injury out,
He's
then
probably
is he
already
first,
been sold to Chelsea.
and he's probably first choice right back. But I don't know. As things stand now, like I'm with, he's just got to be the one. He's got to be the one to go.
All in all, yes, I agree. Yes, Adam, Craig, I am on board with that. I just think we could do with sending him out on loan instead of cutting altogether.
I'd agree with
just
that.
to check.
I would, yeah. Because if he goes in as a stormer in the championship and you go, oh, why did we sell him? And I guess hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it seems like a very plausible thing that would happen, that he'd go and tear up the championship. And then you go, why the hell did we sell him? But I do think he needs to go, even if it is temporarily. And like you said, go find himself, go work in a position and consistently, right? The heavy rotation that he's seen in the last couple of years, either via injury or managerial decisions, hasn't really helped him either. And that doesn't help injuries either. It's a lot stop-start. So he's had a torrid couple of years, but it's not his fault. Otherwise, I think I'm hard-pressed to find anyone else that I actively want to sell. I think the only one will probably be Igor. It seems like such a short tenure, but I do think he's good. It probably doesn't really fit. But then we're talking about a fit of a manager that we don't know yet. So it's like, okay. So I'm looking at it and I go, I can see why all of these guys are here. I think if I had to choose one, I would probably send Lamptey on loan for a year.
Yeah, I think we're all on board with the Lamptey move, regardless of whether it's permanent or semi. Adam, I fully agree with you too, by the way. I'm all aboard the Webster train. Like he doesn't offer anything to me that I don't think like a younger player has. Like this, the Atom getting great reviews, rave reviews in the under 21s. Offia, like we've seen enough from him. Like he certainly ain't a right winger, but like he looks like a very tidy centre half. Like I'd rather have one of those on the bench at this point.
I'd rather keep Igor than Webster.
Oh, a million miles.
Oh yeah.
Regardless, though, unless
Well, that didn't seem that clear. But yeah, I don't know if that's opinion shared by everyone. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I am
Yeah.
though. I think I should be keeping Igor. Like he's obviously happy enough being a rotational centre half. But I would trust him at centre back more than I would trust Adam Webster at centre back. He's been caught out of position a few times, but that's just the nature of being a centre half. Less said about Lewis Dunk's positional ability this season, the better, right? Like he's been really exposed a lot this last
Yeah, imagine if someone came on and went, "Yeah, Dunk's got to go."
Also, how much of that is due to De Zerbi ball and what does this new manager bring in? Like we already know that Webster under Houghton and Potter had his moments. Like what's to say that under a new manager, Igor has less of those? Like I don't, better the devil you know, but absolutely not in this case. I know enough. I'd rather bin him off as well. So for me, I would bin off Lamptey and Webster as well. So
I think when you move into midfield and attack, I might be wrong. I think there's far less of a concern for me.
interesting, because I've got the side out.
Have you?
I'm ready. I'm ready to do it.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like the one that sticks out for me, who is Moda. I just don't think it's. I don't see it.
Well, hold on. Gross is leaving. You're selling Moda. Mahmoud Dahoud doesn't care about football anymore, so we don't have a central midfielder. Who are you playing?
We're signing someone. Like,
oh, that'd be a chance to be a finding.
Well, I mean, like, I'm playing a fully fit Jack Hinchelwood over Moda like every single day.
Who's your right back?
What in this?
Yeah,
Veltman.
You were just about ready to get rid.
Yeah, but needs must. Like,
Christ.
Who would you rather keep?
We send all these, by the way, at the end of the podcast. We tally this all up. We send it over to Paul and Tony, and they just put it in the shredder.
Yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, I'm getting rid of Moda, to be honest. Even before his injury, I saw him as one of those midfielders who he doesn't really fit. Like he doesn't really fit the mold anywhere. I don't know if that makes sense. He's a good player, but he doesn't have a natural home. I don't think. Because he doesn't. I mean, he's got a hell of a shot on him. He's got a very, very good ability to nearly score goals. Like, it's one of those players you go...
We need one now Lallana's gone.
Yeah, I suppose he could fill the Lallana role of, like, that's a good shot, but he's never going to go in, right? So, yeah, Moda. I'm cutting Moda from this. I appreciate you didn't read out the list of midfielders, Josh.
Yeah, but, just to reiterate, let's list them for everybody listening. So, James Milner... Solly March, Billy Gilmore, Pascal Gross. Obviously, we've already talked a little bit about him and his future. Adam Lallana, who is gone now, possibly due to sign with Saints for a year. Carlos Paleba, Jakob Moda, Karim Mitoma, Jack Hinchelwood, Bonanotte, Pupion, and we'll include Barco in this list. I assume we're all happy with him being more of a central midfielder. Yeah. He thinks he's the central midfielder. We're all happy considering part of the midfield, at least, ahead of anyone else. Is that all right?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a heck of a cross on him, but I don't want him in central midfield. But that's another argument to have, a different day.
Yeah, you can argue with him about that because it's his words that consider
again. Yeah, I'm going to send this on Instagram, and he's going to put it in the virtual shredder. So same thing, isn't it? So yeah, out of that list, I mean, Moda and probably Pepillon. I mean, I'd probably loan him out. I mean, he went basically straight from a League One, a loan towards the bottom of League One with Cheltenham, was it? I think. Came back and was, had a couple of games here and there. So I'd send him to the Championship for a loan. I mean, the same can be said to Moda, to loan him out somewhere in Europe to get a full season of football somewhere. Because I just don't think it's going to be with us. I think he's going to be, if he stays, it's going to be that kind of bit part player role, which isn't going to necessarily do him the best. So those two I'd cut. The rest I'm pretty happy with.
Craig?
It's tough. I would have got rid of Milner, but he's just signed a contract, right? But it would have been someone that I'd actively be looking to get rid of, given his injury records and how old he is. The Moda stuff I semi agree with. he needs to play consistent football, and if that's not going to be here, then it needs to be somewhere else. I think he's just come off a big injury as well. He can't come on 20 minutes a game and really get back to the level that we probably see him having at some point in the future. Otherwise, it's tough. I think I'm interested to hear about yours, Josh, because I can't see where we're going to really chop down. There does need to be some ruthless decisions to be made, right? I feel like everyone sort of fits in where they need to, whether that's on the bench as a bit part player or whether that's a solidified starter. So it is tough. I think those two are the real ones. Pupion, so weird that he even got a chance after his Cheltenham thing because he was pretty dire by all accounts. So a loan there with a view to permanent doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is who I would get rid of, not who is actually going to go. But looking at that list, and it's going off of like the main squad list on the thing. Milner, gone, get rid. Lallana, already gone, but I would have got rid of him anyway. I'd have been like, you either be a coach or you go. Like, you're totally stinking the place up. We don't want you on the pitch anymore. Baleba, if you're not thinking you're ready, loan him, get rid of him. Buonanotte, if you're not ready, loan him, get rid. Pupion, cut, get rid of him. Hinshelwood, decide where he's supposed to be playing. If he's going to be a right back, he's a right back. If he's going to be a centre midfielder, then he's got a pre-season. If he's not good enough, loan. Like, there's just our midfield is an absolute shit show. I think I really do. Like, I think it's absolutely crap. Like, the depth behind Caicedo and McAllister. Now we're looking at it. Like, it's Pascal Gross and Billy Gilmore. Like, that's not a midfield that we can ever rely on. Like, I think it's crap. I don't think we get rid of Moda though. Like, I think he's only just came back from injury. So for me, like, let's see what the new manager wants. He could end up turning Moda because, as you say, Robin, like, he's such a versatile player. Like, you don't really know where he fits, right? Like, for Poland, his best position was like that roaming 10. Like, he was a beast for them before he got hurt. Like, he was scoring goals, he was getting assists, he was getting like ripping England apart. Not hard to do, but like he was very, very good. Like, if we decide we know where his best position is and we play him there consistently, keep him. But like, there's so many young players here that are just like Pupion. I don't know what his point is. Like, Buonanotte, loan. Baleba, loan. Milner, get rid. Lallana, get rid. Like, I just don't see the point in half of these players. If they're not ready, like, why do we keep trying to like bleed them into being ready with 20 minutes here, there, and everywhere? Like, let's send them out on loan and actually do some business in the transfer market. Or just sack it off altogether and accept we're not going to do very well.
It's hard to figure this out.
That's enough. Robin's had enough.
Robin's
He's gone. It's absolutely broken.
It's hard to figure this out until we know what the new manager's preference is going to be, because we basically sort of very clearly played this 4-2-3-1 for quite a while at this point. And from a personnel standpoint, you've got clear roles and setups. And with that in mind, like, for me, there's then a front four. So some of the names you listed off to me are attackers. Like, Buonanotte is an attacker for me, not a midfielder. But, you know, for me, we've got basically two central midfield positions / one central attacking midfielder, if you want to think about it that way. I think Gilmore I really like Gilmore, and I'd love to keep him around and starting every single game. Pascal Gross, we know where we're at collectively with that. Then everything else is a question mark. Every other single player in those positions for me are question marks. Apart from
I'm glad I'm not the only one then.
I mean, we've seen it on the pitch. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, none of the other players have been good enough for this club yet. I'm not getting rid of Milner because I just don't think it's good business. You keep him around for the additional year, and that's fine, right? You hope he doesn't get injured for 55 years again. I'm hopeful with Baleba. I thought we saw enough flashes last season that he's going to turn into a decent player. And you hope he continues on the trajectory that we saw from previous players in that position for the club, namely your Basumas, your Caicedos. Yeah, it's very aspirational there, but that's the hope. we haven't really talked about Mahmoud Dahoud. Joke. We haven't talked about Yasin Ayari. Didn't do much on loan. Massive question marks over Moda, but is it really worth getting rid of him with a year left on his contract? What's his value at the moment? Nothing.
Not a
6
huge
million? I don't know. 10? Who knows? So yeah, we need a lot of reinforcement. I'm not culling like you are, Josh. I'm not going in saying, oh yeah, let's get rid. But I just think we're lacking quality. I think we're lacking quality, and I
think it's
want that to change.
It's another one that's very difficult to answer in the context of. It's another obvious one where you go when you get to the end of the transfer window, right, and you're seeing who's come in. Like if we knew now who we were going to bring in, right, it's an easier question, right, because you know. So there's a few that like you could easily get rid of, and you have a great transfer window, and you go, yeah, that's absolutely right. But you could get rid of those same few, have a dreadful transfer window, and go, that was a terrible decision getting rid of whoever it was.
Well, let's what's the most likely hypothetical here when we look at the midfield? Let's say that Gross stays for one more year.
Yeah.
Let's say Dahoud's back out on loan because we don't want him here, right? Gilmore and Gross are basically the two that are your starters. But as we've seen, the rotation there is gigantic. You got Belaber as your backup.
You've got one less competition to worry about, rotation-wise.
Sure, but then what happens after that? Your Belaber and Milner are your change of pace. They're your rotational options. And then you've got Moda with the question mark. But now let's imagine we hypothetically bring in the one guy that's been probably the name that's the most rumoured, Dewsbury Hall. Like, that's a good enough group for me, I think, until we see the injuries that we saw this season. Like Gross, Dewsbury Hall, Gilmore with Milner and Belaber as other options. For me, I'm okay with that. But that's a big signing you have to make.
I think for me, like none of them have the defensive presence that Belaber has, and like I think like that's why I've had him on the low, unless you're going to be playing 30 out of 38 games a season. Like if whoever it is comes in and goes, yeah, my boy's ready. Like he is. That time has been good for him. He's got enough play time. He's been on fire preseason. James in the chat saying he thinks he might be ready for a breakout season this year. If the manager agrees, don't touch him. Like I totally don't loan him out. Keep him. Like I want him to play every game if we consider him ready. Because I agree with you, Adam. We've seen flashes of that ability that clearly resides in him. But if we don't think he is ready and we make a signing, whatever signings in midfield, I think wasting his time 20 minutes a game every here and there, like I think he's one of the top ones that's got to be loaned out for regular football because he's not going to benefit from just sitting on the bench all the time.
Tinfoil hat moment, by the way. I bet this was one of the positions of major disagreement between De Zerbi and the hierarchy, because it goes back to the transfer policy. They're all about siling the Belabers and hoping they come good, coach them. We've seen the talent, make it work. And De Zerbi's probably going, clearly, I'm not ready to start him. He doesn't fit into the system well enough. I need you to sign the bigger name player that plays in that role. And they go, do one, mate. And, you know, I know where I sit on that.
But I fully agree with Roberto. Like, we are crying out for a defense, an enforcer of some kind. Like, a Bissouma, a Caicedo. Like, and if your Bissouma or your Caicedo got hurt, if Bissouma got hurt, Caicedo was there to help out. If Caicedo got hurt, we didn't really have anybody. Like, and now we're in an even worse position where we don't have a Caicedo or Bissouma, and we're at a point where, like to me, like that is the key position. Like, we can sign Dewsbury Hall, like if we want, great. I think it'd actually be a superb signing. We've all talked about it in January, great signing. But I don't think he's the need we need. Like, we have Gilmore that can play in that more creative role. We have Gross that can play in that more creative role. We have Moda who can play in that more creative role. We have Milner who could do it if, like, worst case scenario. We have Hinchelwood who says that's his best position. We have Barco who insists it's his best position also. So that's 6 players there that all consider themselves centre midfielders, and all of them have plenty of creative bones in their body, right? Like, so how many of those have a defensive side to them that you think I can trust that man to man the defense in front of, like, anchor that back four, back three, whatever it ends up being, right? Like, it goes all the way back to like the Charlie Oakway years, right? When I was a kid, like, yeah, Liam Bridcuts, like we always, like, most teams need one, and that's where they're best.
Pacey, marauding defensive midfielder that can go, basically can box to box but can sit there in front. Absolutely.
And they're so boring. Look at Rodri. He's one of the best players on the planet, and he doesn't do anything that makes the headlines other than win football games. Like, we don't have one. We had one in Basuma. We had one in Oatway all those years ago. We had one in Bridcut for all those years. We had one in Basuma and Caicedo. We never replaced it. Like, the other version of that midfielder is infinitely more replaceable and chop and changeable than that one. And like, if we had £100 million budget this summer, I'll be perfectly happy signing 2 players, a £20 million right back, and spending all 80 on one of those. Like, it would pay for itself through season. I know it's not going to happen, but like, it would pay for itself. Like, by like game week 9, we would go, he was worth every penny.
But we still have all that money. So I still can't fathom how there's been such a disagreement over this idea that they want the model to stay consistent, but at the detriment of performance. And you see the holes in the team. And if you even put all of the injuries to one side, it's just abundantly clear that this team has been realistically crying out for a right back, a backup left back, and that position. And you solve that purely the money you got from Caicedo. You solve all of that. So I just don't understand where the falling out has come from. If it is that, if it's purely that, I don't get it, because it's obvious. Fix that bit.
And you know what? I'll even go further to say, if we sign that player, Baleba also fits the creative side mold, by the way, because he is happy getting forward. Like, he created some great chances. Like, even if you go, well, even if the club are like, well, Baleba's that guy, like, he can also be the other guy. Actually, we've seen it. Like, if you actually let Gross go and whoever, like, Baleba loved going forward. So like, you've got him too. So like, it's not a case of like, oh, well, we've spent £15 million on Baleba, he's your project. Like, he can be the project in the other role. Don't spend the 40 million on Shrewsbury Hall. Give Baleba a go there. Like, he can do it. Like, him, Gilmore, Grow. Like, we've got loads of them that can fill that McAllister role. Like, it's very easily replaceable. Like, we can't replace that other one as easy. That's the one where, sorry guys, like, you got infinitely lucky and fluked it twice in a row. Like, sadly, you're gonna have to spend some real money, like the ones that like actually get written out and you have to spend them and it makes you uncomfortable doing it. Like, that's the position you have to spend on.
We can't do it now though, because if we do it, it makes the whole De Zerbi thing look nuts. We can't do it.
So you're to say Tony Bloom will almost literally cut off his nose to spite his face in that regard.
Well, not to say that it would be that, but like, why? Like, logically, why would you have that? Why would that falling out happen?
Right, exactly.
If you're then going to change tack and he's going to get to like August and go, do you know what? Like, if you're sitting there in August,
imagine if you signed Manuel Locatelli after all this.
That would be so funny.
Well, that's the thing. As De Zerbi came in with a list, right? Has De Zerbi came in with a list of 4 players that fit that mold and go, I want one of these 4 this summer. I know you can afford it. We've talked budgets already. I know they're possible. I've spoken to X and Y's agent, and they've gone, none of them fit the model. And that's why they've had the falling out. We're happy to spend £45 million on a midfielder, but not any of them 4, because you wanted the Hood.
Well, yeah. Well, let's face it. Who did he want?
The Hood.
Igor and Ansu Fati.
He didn't want Ansu Fati. That's a rumor.
Come on, we all wanted Ansu Fati. Everyone
no, but
did.
it wasn't a De Zerbi signing.
He was told to go and do the selling job, basically, when it was clear that it might be on. Like,
Paul Barber got the call. Yeah, Paul Barber got the call that there was a possibility. Paul Barber saw like dollar signs, like any rational human would be, at the idea of taking Ansu Fati on loan, and said, "This is the opportunity we've been presented with. Do you want to go after that?" And De Zerbi said, "Of course, I want to have the chance of getting Ansu Fati here, like everyone else." And he did the selling job. He was not a De Zerbi signing, though. Like, we need to be really clear on that, because there's a lot of people saying that he's an abs like
Yeah,
there was
me
a big
included.
reason
But,
to get rid of him.
but
But
that
it
was-
wasn't his.
But that's very like, as in what you're just describing is exactly what we're saying Bloom won't do. That broke our wage structure incredibly. It didn't fit in with what the teams. It was a complete aberration because we had zero chance of ever signing the guy permanently. We never make those kind of loans. So are we saying then that Bloom has learned his lesson, either from De Zerbi or from himself, that he's not gonna do that again?
I don't know. I just think I can't see a situation in which we essentially go and do what Roberto asked us to do, and Tony said no. Like, I can't, like, logically, like, why would that happen? Like, can you imagine if you get to August, right, and he goes out, the club go out and spend 30 million on a right back, 30 million on a defensive midfielder, and 30 million on an attacking midfielder, right? Like, Roberto De Zerbi's just like sitting there going, you know, he's not in a job by this point, right? He's still
Graham Potter will do a great job with them. I won't worry
but
too
you know,
much.
but I cannot see. I just cannot see it happen. Not that Tony would not do it to, you know, out of spitefulness, but like purely, why in 3 months' time would he do something totally different to what's caused, you know?
Well, I'll give you. We will move on to forwards here in a minute. I don't think there's going to be as much conversation around them, to be fair. But it could be the age-old thing that you see in like relationships. We're going back to this type like tangent now, but like those couples that are together forever and they're like, oh, like you don't want to marry me, like, or like you don't want to get married, you like, why won't you propose, blah 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 blah, and then they break up, and like a year later the guy's like engaged. It's like he didn't want to get married, he just didn't want to get married to you. Like, and that's like sad, right? Like you were happy being in a relationship with this girl for like 8 years, or this guy for 8 years, but you turned down his proposal twice, or he never asked you to marry him. It's like, then you break up and then they're engaged in a year's time, and it's like, well, it was actually you he didn't want to marry, not the other way around. Like it could be the same thing. Like if
I don't think you're wrong.
If Bloom doesn't like the lack of commitment, if he has questions around his commitment, he has questions around the project and his permanent look on that, right? Because I think everybody was duped into thinking, and to be fair to him, I think he thought it too. Like I think Graham and the club all were moving in the same direction, and they all commit. Like they were happy spending this money for Potter because they believed he was going to be a long-term prospect, and everything he'd said was clear. Couldn't have been more clear that it wasn't that way. So from March onwards, I think it's that. I won't be surprised if we get a new manager in. It's less exciting than De Zerbi, but we're all quite okay with it. Like we'll get to those names in a minute, but like, and they do spend 125 million pounds in summer, and one of them is a 50 million pound player. And Robin and other people go, well, why the hell didn't you do that, De Zerbi? I think that's why.
Yeah,
personally, I think it's.
He
It's
burned
not
the
a
bridge.
Tony Bloom money.
The bridge was burnt, wasn't it? And I think it was an easy excuse. Well, maybe not even an excuse. I think it's completely valid that there were disagreements over the transfer policy. But you're right. I think if this was Graham Potter delivering that same message, guys, we got to make these signings. We need to really push on. A different outcome, right? Because he played along with everything else, and he didn't go out and spend 3 months pissing off the people that run the club by what he said, and then shat the bed on performances for the last 10 games. So yeah. Let's talk about forwards.
Yeah, let's talk about forwards. Craig, first of all, Mithrandir in the chat thanking us for a great season of commentary and enjoy listening to the show. We love that you listen. So
thanks, Mum.
So let's talk forwards. James in the chat, if Ferguson gets back on track next year, pairing with JP and Welbeck as a reserve, job done with forwards. They currently look like on the website João Pedro, Enciso, Welbeck, Adingra, Fergie, and Fatty. Quite why Mitoma is in midfielders and
this is what I mean. Yeah,
we'll never know. But we'll list that as is. Fatty's gone. Obviously, he's definitely not coming back. So it leaves us with Pedro, Enciso, Welbeck, Adingra, and Ferguson. Craig, how are we feeling about those five?
I'd whack Solly March in there as well if he's fit, right?
Oh,
but
of course.
I think I'd keep it. I don't think I'd make any changes. Like the problem has gone back to their parent club, and it's sort of, you have a good core of wingers and forwards there. Ferguson off the boil, blessing in disguise, won't go anywhere this summer, which is which is great. So yeah, no changes here. I think if you're going to make any changes, you bring someone in. You're not getting rid of any of those guys for me.
Yeah, this is a weird one. I think it's a bit tricky because from a left wing stand, I'm going to break it down into how we play. From a left wing standpoint, obviously Matoma is your guy. No questions. Now, you can play Adingra on that left wing position as well. Mithrandir in the chat's also brought up Osman, who from Norway or whatever, who can come in. I think he's sort of signed a multi-year contract with us as well. We don't know what we don't know there yet as well. Let's not forget Sarmiento hypothetically could be involved in this conversation too. But point being is that you've got quality on the left wing. You've got Matoma and you've got Adingra, and you do have other players that can play there. We've seen João Pedro play there, haven't we? Right wing is a question for me. Now, it might not feel like there's a question, but you've got March and Adingra. But we've seen what happens with these positions when you lose one or two players to injury. The whole thing falls away. Because we've got quality on left wing or right wing, but we don't have depth. I would like to see a depth signing that can play, preferably on the right wing, because with left wing, at least you could argue that maybe Barco could do a job out there on left wing as well, right? This year for me, centrally, is the year that we have to see Enciso basically start almost every game. I think this is the one where he needs to really be the go-to for me. Up top is where I've got some reservations. You're relying on an aging Danny Welbeck on the last contract of his career, probably. And Evan Ferguson, who completely lost his way. Let's be honest about it. He started off great and he was useless for 75% of the season. And we know what his potential is. We know all of that. But if he doesn't show it again, it's hard to rely on that. Now, you've obviously got João Pedro. Now, I'm not saying we need to bring in another striker or anything like that. Now, ideally, Denison behaved himself and came back and played as a rotation option in that group after a stunning season in Germany. But I do have concern. I would like to see one other body join this group that can play in multiple roles.
I mean, Undo's been very vocal that he doesn't want to come back, wants nothing to do with it.
He's done. Yeah, he's gone.
Couldn't be more obvious that he does not want to be anywhere near us. So, yeah, I think that's fair enough. I don't have much to add, really. I think it was a really good point Mithrandir in the chat made of Osman from the Norwegian team, because he's definitely been signed as a first choice, like first team squad player. Totally forgot about him, so I'm glad he brought him up. But he's going to be one that I'm sure will be playing now. I don't know if he's a right, left, or centre.
He's left. So
yeah,
it brings my point up that we're very top heavy with left wingers, right? I think Adingra can play there, but probably his first choice would be left wing. Matoma's got that on lock if he's fit. So, you're then talking Matoma and March. If there's a body to bring in, it's a right winger or someone that is happy to play in that right wing. We know that Adingra can, but, is it something he's actively going to want to do for the foreseeable future? So that would be my only thing to add, really, is I think a right winger would be perfect.
Yeah, agree.
Yep.
Because I don't like Buonanotte on that right wing.
No, not at all. He's not a right winger at all. Like,
no.
The only times he looks at all adept is in that 10 role.
And he's not starting ahead of Enciso. So,
or Pedro if he plays there with Fergie. Or Welbeck.
You've got also, you have to also be mindful of the fact that we might need to rely on Solly March playing elsewhere in this team, depending on what happens at right and left back. So if you then think, all right, let's say you've got 2 injuries in the team, which you're always going to have 2 injuries in the team. Let's say it happens at right back and it happens at left wing to Matoma. Suddenly, Adingra's playing on the left. You've got no one at right wing, and you're suddenly back on the Buonanotte project. So yeah, we need one more body here. But this team doesn't need a drastic overhaul, in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of, I know you've got the scythe out, to use your words, in the midfield, but we need depth in certain areas and maybe one splash player in central midfield. But we've got the money to do that. And I really don't think we're a million miles off of it. But the most important signing this year will be the manager, obviously. I got one last question, though, because I don't know the answer to this. What the hell's happened with Abdullah Sima? Is he Is he sick? Doesn't want to come back? Does he want to stay at Rangers? Like, what's the deal there?
Last I saw was like 2 weeks ago. He said he was really happy at Rangers, and there'll be a conversation take place about whether he can stay or not. But like again, new manager comes in and goes, "Yeah, I've watched." A new manager comes in and does what Roberto did to Solly and go, "I've been a big fan of what he did at Rangers, and Seaman's coming back and playing for us, isn't he? Like he's not going anywhere. Like if he comes back and the new manager's like, you were sick, I want to play you up top with Pedro. Like he's like, yeah, like absolutely."
Yeah.
James in the chat, Sarmiento too, right? If Kieran McKenna had signed with us, he's not going nowhere. Like he's absolutely at least making our 18, 21 or whatever it is these days. Like he's on the bench as a bare minimum every single week. Now, don't know what that manager's going to look into. So yeah, this is why we were hoping that we'd have had this guy in so we could do this at the same time and have an idea. In the interest of time, let's skip positions of need regardless of manager because we've covered them pretty extensively. Right back, possibly a right winger, midfield, possibly another fullback in general. So I think we're all pretty much agreed on that. Yeah. We've talked about that a lot. We'll also skip the next season's goals, hopes, worries point because we've basically done that for an hour and 20 minutes and we'll probably do it for another 30. So we're just going to skip that because that's just seemed to have been part and parcel. So let's talk about a couple of things then. Players we think benefit most from Roberto De Zerbi exiting Brighton and Hove Albion, and players we think have the most to lose from Roberto leaving. This was a really interesting chat when Roberto came in, predicting who would benefit the most from him and who would really have most to lose. And I went back and listened to it. We absolutely effing nailed it, fellas. Like we got it spot on. Like every player that we said we thought would benefit from having De Zerbi as their manager before he'd even managed a training session. I think we got literally 100% record on the ones that would do well and the ones that would do poorly.
I would have bet in the
no
opposite
pressure.
direction. So that's fairly impressive.
It is a rare occasion. It's rare enough that I had to bring it up. So let's do this all over again. Who do you think will benefit the most from losing De Zerbi, and who do you think is gonna really be sitting there thinking like, shit, like this is bad for me?
I think Carlos Baleba gains, right? Because we talked about this a lot. It felt like De Zerbi never really took the shackles off to let him just play 90 minutes regularly, even though it felt like we needed someone in there to do that job. You have to imagine someone else might come in and look to play him more often. And clearly the guy needs minutes. Losers, I think it's brought up, James, in the chat. Solly March loses. I mean, I'm very worried. I think there's this big assumption here that Solly March is going to come back and be the same player that we saw before the injury. The last manager prior to De Zerbi, for me, March was one of our worst players. I made no bones about that. There's no saying that someone else is going to come in and just not properly utilize him in the same way as well. Like with our hope is that he's as good, but who knows? I think this is a bit of a cop-out one, but for me, like Jason Steele is one of the biggest losers. We're not going to have someone come in and do this idiotic BS with the goalkeepers again. It's Verbruggen's job.
I had Verbruggen in the pros for role reversal, right? Like there should be no misunderstanding now as to who your number one is. So for the benefits, I had Verbruggen probably top because I was like, well, now he's just going to start every game. So that's perfect, right? That's exactly what we want. I did have Barco on there as well. Like, I think he might a fresh set of eyes and be able to sort of prove himself from day one now that he's in the door, had a summer, and he can show whether he's a central mid, whether he's a left mid, whether he's a left back, whatever. But I think he's going to benefit from having a fresh start as opposed to everything else. But I think, the most losing was just the same list, but the opposite, right? So all of the ones we got right 2 years ago are the exact ones that you'd think are probably going to lose now, because those were people that fit that RDZ mold of, okay, this person, he has a track record of making these exact types of players better. And therefore I'm half expecting, in a very morbid way, I'm expecting a similar drop-off, just because that tends to be what happens. So your Solly Marches, your Gilmores, your Van Heckers, potentially, your Jason Steele, obviously, are the 4 that I'm looking at there going, we can probably expect a decrease in performance or form here, just because RDZ made them so much better.
By the way, if Van Hecker does drop off, well, that's a big worry because Dunk dropped off this year. Eagle was still not sold on. We talked about Webster. Suddenly
Well,
you
Eagle-
go, oh God.
Eagle's on my list of possible gainers, actually.
Interesting.
He's the only left-footed centre half we've got.
Yeah.
European experience, 26 years old. If this manager plays a back 3, huge potential for being that guy. If he wants a left-sided centre half and a left foot and right foot centre half, Van Hecker's probably the one to lose out, right? Like, he's going to go with the 26-year-old with European experience. Like, I think he has got the potential as like the biggest gainer here. Whether it's for better or worse after 20 games, we'll find out. But like, I think he, given his pedigree and given his uniqueness in being the only left-footed centre half we have, like, depending on the manager that comes in, I think he's got to be sitting there going, I made 24 appearances last season. Like, I've got a good chance of making a whole lot more. Like, if I can sell this new guy, right? I was always meant to be a rotational piece because that's how De Zerbi operates. Like, most managers like to have a very set and forget back 2 or 3. I think he's probably sitting there rubbing his hands together and thinking, you ain't got any other left-footed centre halves. I've been there, done it. I think I'm your guy.
Yeah, this was a point. I think Naylor made it, and I actually don't disagree with it, about this idea that exactly what you said. Like, that frees up Dunk to play on the right side, potentially more comfortable. And the downside to Van Hecker's big jump has been that you've had to play two right-footed centre backs. I don't know how big of a thing that is, but I don't disagree with you at the same time. What do we think of Hinshelwood's trajectory without De Zerbi and then Joel Veltman at the same time? Because those have almost gone in opposite directions under De Zerbi.
They both stood out to me too as like...
Yeah. I don't think Hinshelwood gets that chance under any other manager, does he? So I'm sure it hugely benefited him and being able to score goals and show what he was capable of. But again, we had that centre mid conversation to death, right? Where does he fit in? And does he play right mid? Like, it's a very patented system that De Zerbi plays, right? Like, it's a very, very peculiar, very unique in that sense. So, what happens when you do play a 4-4-2 or where you do play a 3-5-2? Where do they fit in? Like you said, if we had a manager in charge by now, this would have been a very, very interesting conversation. But at the moment, it's just question marks. But I agree with you. I think at this moment, Hinshelwood is set to lose out for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think him and Moda are in that position of like total question marks. Like Robin was saying, like, we have no idea what Moda's best position is. Like, whatever this manager decides could make or break Moda, like, and Hinshelwood and Barco, frankly. Like, if he turns around and goes, you're not a centre midfielder, mate, and you're never going to be, like, what does that, and he wants to be one, like, does that piss off Barco and make him want to leave even this early? Like, well, I want to go somewhere where I can be, and it causes a bunch of bullshit. Like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a weird one, but yeah, I think Hinshelwood is at risk. And Veltman too, really. Like, he's not had his best games at centre back. Like,
no.
I'm really not sure what's going to happen with him.
Yeah, it's again, not knowing the manager coming in is very hard to be able to ascertain what this looks like.
Who would you say is immune?
Immune?
Immune, no matter the manager. Okay, I'll give you one.
Mitoma. Yeah.
Anyone else? Pedro?
Verbruggen, Dunk, Pedro. Those are sort of the 4, right?
Purvis,
Not after this season.
dog agrees. I mean, you don't have another.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
yeah.
it's
No,
still Purvis for me. He's still
Yeah.
your left back.
All right, here's the fun part that I'm sure everyone was excited to hear about because that pretty much covers the season review. So let's talk next permanent manager of Brighton and Hove Albion. On the 19th of May, that was the last game that De Zerbi managed. 2-0 loss to Manchester United. Absolute disaster, like just awful football game. And since then, we haven't recorded an episode, so we've had a fair bit of drama in between. Farioli, who was up there amongst the favourites, has since signed with Ajax from Nice. Seemed to have been one of those managers that was definitely in a conversation. He's already signed with Ajax. We absolutely were in for Kieran McKenna. Everyone in their nan has confirmed that this was the case. And McKenna has now signed an extension with Ipswich, making him the 5th or 6th highest paid manager in the Premier League. Regardless of what people think of that, Ipswich will probably say it's their signing of the summer. If he keeps them up, I'm inclined to agree. If he goes down with them, I suspect there are a lot of Barcelona-esque levers and clauses that will bring his wages down to a manageable rate, along with probably a really nice release clause that will let him go to a Premier League club for a nice price. I'm sure there's been a very friendly contract done here for both sides, with a lot of money spent if he can keep them up, because he would be worth every penny. So, first choice, Kieran McKenna. I think we're all safe to assume that in spite of all of the rumours, we're pretty sure that was the case. McKenna was number one with a bullet. Farioli maybe was there or thereabouts, gone to Ajax. Since then, we've had the Graham Potter rumours. We've had the Steve Cooper rumours. We've had the Henrik Rydstrom rumours. We've had the Russell Martin rumours, Garcia Pimienta rumours. And we've also had a little bit of... who was the other fella that we
Henrik Rydstrom? Did you say him?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Oh, Brendan Rodgers. That was the other one.
Well,
Currently, the bookies have Graham Potter as 11 to 10 favourite, Steve Cooper second, Henrik Rydstrom third, Russell Martin, Liam Rosenia, Garcia Pimienta, Ruben Amorim, Ten Hag, Xavi, Carlos Corberan, Knutsen, Carrick, Fonseca, Rob Edwards, lots of names in amongst this group. We've had some quite spectacular social media meltdowns where Graham Potter has been concerned. They've somehow become just as mental about Steve Cooper. James in the chat is actually glad we didn't take McKenna. It is also funny to see McKenna outright turn down Chelsea, which was fun. Ten Hag has stayed at Manchester United as far as we know. What next, guys? Like, McKenna not coming, Farioli already gone. Whether Farioli really was or wasn't part of it, we don't know. McKenna, we know was. We're now on plan B as a bare minimum. The only other time we seem to have had to move to a plan B was Sami Hyypiä. Under Bloom. Where are we at with this list of names? How are you feeling? Where are you at? I believe it's day 16. The longest was the Hyypiä one with 25 days. You can check our Twitter account for the rundown that I posted on the way to the Amex 2 weeks ago, as to what those timeframes look like. What are your thoughts, fellas? The betting market is barely moved because, frankly, nobody has a clue. Potter being 11 to 10 honestly means absolutely jack shit at this point because it's not moved in days and no one has a clue. Like, really, they may as all be 10 to 1, like for reality's sake. So, where are we at? How are we feeling? When do you think this gets assigned? Like, what do you think happens next?
I'd say we're pretty fucked, actually. This was very clearly, as you've said, this was Kieran McKenna's job. And I think Bloom and co thought that they could just win him over. Come and join this club. Look at us. We just played in the Europa League. Yeah, you've done a good job with Ipswich, but come on. This is a different stage, mate. And then, of course, everything happened. And I don't think we're now. I don't know if the club knows what they're doing, and I worry they don't. And this is this club's big focus, the big reputation has always been this mystique around, well, there's always a plan. They've always got a plan. The succession planning goes on for decades. Don't worry about it. Fucking doesn't. Really doesn't. De Zerbi pissed off Bloom. Bloom pissed off De Zerbi. It was breaking down towards the end of the season. Then clearly that final disagreement over transfer policy for the following season. Because, by the way, different conversation. If De Zerbi just stood down, I think Bloom goes, all right, mate, let's give this another year. You pissed me off earlier, but let's just do this, right? And I'm going to sign these players. You're going to do what you're told. Which De Zerbi stays.
I mean, by all accounts, the relationship between Bloom and Gus Poyet is okay. So, like, yeah, definitely agree. Like, if he can be all right with Gus after all that, like, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think if he'd have just stepped down and like backed down, we wouldn't be in a situation.
No, and now we are, and I am not excited by any of the options that are being talked about. Any of them. I'd be lying if I said I think the one that probably seems most exciting is Rydstrom, just because he's got a funky name. I like his beard. That's it. I wish I could tell you more. No, I mean, if someone has sat down here and watched Malmo play this year, I mean, by all accounts, they play some nice possession football and they score a bunch of goals, and he's done a great job making them, look a lot better than they were. Wonderful. It's Malmo. Like, oh no, at least De Zerbi, I know it was coming in from Donetsk, but he'd had a track record. He'd set Serie A on fire. This wasn't, I know it was a bit left field, but this wasn't just some dipshit from nowhere. This is a guy that had coached Champions League football and had completely subverted the impression of how the game is played in Italy. Now we're talking about bringing back bloody Graham Potter or some guy from Malmo, or Steve Cooper. What is this? Like, it's not okay. I'm annoyed now. And there's also another name that seems to be like doing the rounds at the moment: Slobodan Drapic, a 59-year-old manager of an Israeli Premier League outfit who was sixth. He's second, third, fourth favorite on 2 different betting sites. Never heard of the man. Never heard of the side.
It's not good, is it?
It's not good.
I think, yeah, the whole betting market stuff, we know what to feel about that. But again, none of them really give you any sort of sense of anticipation, right? The only one that I would go, okay, I'd take that is probably Ruben Amorim, right? Because I think he's sort of, obviously it's the Portuguese league, but he's
coming here.
It's set. I know he's not, but like he's on that list, right? And if they're all 10-1, you go, Craig, pick one. Go ahead and just pick one from that 10 of people. Like, that's the one that I would probably choose. But he's not going to come here. West Ham, Liverpool, those sort of things. Again, doesn't seem that interested. All of them, it's like it's just going to be underwhelming, and unless, and this will be a track record as well, unless it's none of them. And I sincerely hope that that's the case, that it is absolutely none of them that we've currently talked about, that it is somebody.
I agree 100%.
And it isn't just, again, a yes man or something like that, or someone that we're taking a gamble on. Because I think, Josh, you alluded to it in a previous podcast too. If you get this managerial appointment wrong, you can end up in a relegation battle very, very quickly. And that's something we actively need to avoid. Has to be right. And it has to be somebody that's not on that list for me as well.
I would also agree with James that I would take Pochettino in a heartbeat, but I don't think
Get out of here. I would take Ana de Armas at a heartbeat as well. By the way, I don't think Pochettino is actually very good. There's absolutely no way he's got. I mean, there's no way. No way.
We've just had a bit of movement on the betting market, literally as I speak. We've had Henrik Rydstrom drop from 4-1 to 6-1, and Michael Carrick just went from 33s to 10s. So that implies actually quite a bit of money has been put on Michael Carrick in the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Quite what we've also saw that with Graham Potter. We saw it with Farioli. We saw it with Ridstrom at one point. There are people there that are stupid and put loads of money on these people to like just be idiots. But
Annoyingly, that's a very Bloom appointment, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm worried. I am worried just about if you look back at the transitions we've had between managers, even if you just think about it from a stylistic standpoint, it's been a little bit flip-flop. And I'm even thinking when you go from like Houghton style of football to Potter style of football, you go from Potter's personality to De Zerbi's personality. I'm wondering, I'm maybe reading too much into this, but I worry that we're going to do what Craig says, and we're going to go with someone that's very malleable, and it's going to do what they say. We make the signings, mate. You coach the team. You worry about the tactics, and that's your focus. And don't be a dickhead with the press.
and I think inevitably that ends up in a downgrade, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you're just not going to get those big thinkers, are you? Think of all the best managers that we've had in recent history, not at this club, but I mean in football. There's a common theme with all of them. They're big personalities and they're outspoken. Like Guardiola, yeah, Man City makes signings, but Guardiola does what he wants. Klopp, sure, he did what he wants. Like there's a lot of this, like they're hard to manage. They're managers that are hard to manage. Yeah, I'm concerned.
I mean, you even go further down the list, right? Like of managers that haven't done it yet, but look like they could, like your Ruben Amorims, right? Like he's just got something. He's got the edge. De Zerbi had it, right? Like to the detriment, like he clearly did. Like you've got all of those, like plenty of younger managers, plenty of older managers. Like there's not many that don't. Like I think really there's a few that come across as maybe they don't. Like outside of the press, like your Ancelotti's, right? Like it seems constantly chill. Like he ain't. Like he ain't got that far and that high as a name in the game. Like Ancelotti doesn't get that far without being like a hard ass behind the scenes. Like same for Xabi Alonso, right? Like like he's got something about him. Like you've seen it. Like he's created something really special in the last 12 months of football. And like it pains me to say it, but like you're starting to see it in Arteta. Like you're seeing like that there's something like big personality wise, like that I never thought that Mikel Arteta would have, but like he's developing one like that comes with winning football games.
It's hard to be a leader of, I know this sounds archaic, but it's hard to be a leader of men by being placid. And I think this is how we saw Potter being undone at Chelsea. He couldn't be a leader of men.
Well, you see that a lot, like Van Gaal at Moyes at United. Like you see a lot of a lot of these top clubs. Like I think you're absolutely right. Like Ten Hag, he's not strong enough.
Yeah,
and the higher you get, the more toxic it is.
And yeah, those changing rooms, they start to be the ones that are managing the team, and that's when you get those. So, I mean, Chelsea famous for it, right? John Terry was managing that team for a while, and all the others.
Lampard.
Yeah. We don't have that same situation here, which is why names like Graham Potter have been able to thrive. But you need someone that's going to come in and you need a manager that's going to view Brighton, and it sounds bad, but you need someone to come in that views Brighton as a stepping stone, because you need ambition. You need someone very ambitious in this role that's going to come in and say, I'm a forward-thinking coach that can make the total of this group. I need it to be bigger than the sum of its parts, because we spend one of the lowest teams from a wage and a transfer budget perspective in the Premier League, but your fans now expect European football. So I've got to go above and beyond. And I've also then got to be that ambitious that I'm going to want to go and coach a Champions League side in the future.
It needs to be, but it needs to be a long-term stepping stone, doesn't it? It needs to be one of those managers that comes in and goes, I'm going to build a legacy over 4 years and then go.
Yeah, 3-4 years. That. Yeah, sure. That's fine. I mean, it's not like Potter was around for less than 3 years. De Zerbi's been around for less than, we don't need him forever, but yeah, they need to make their mark a little bit. I worry that, I don't know.
This is a weird one because I got asked this yesterday as well by someone. Craig, would you take Thomas Frank?
I would.
Yeah. Would you
I
pay
think-
for him?
No,
5 million.
but I mean, I'm not in charge of the
No, I know. but-
accounts payable, but like it's something that it fits, right? I think Brentford have a very similar money ball model, right? And it sort of the transition would be relatively seamless. I don't think he's got a lot of stock on his name either, which would make him cheaper just because of the season
right
that
now.
Brentford had.
Yeah.
So yes, if it was offered and we said, yeah, Thomas Frank is available, would you bring him in? I'd say yeah.
It was a name that I hadn't even thought of, but someone asked me the question, and
Yeah.
I said the same thing. I was like, "Yeah, actually, I would. I would take him
Yeah.
over almost all the names that are on the list."
Yeah, I mean, you've got the Ben and Bloom debacle that will probably cause an issue in negotiations, but whatever.
I mean, yeah, that'd be popcorn, wouldn't it? You'd love to be in a fly on the
Oh,
wall. for that one.
you'd want it on pay per view. Yeah.
It just it can't be Potter or Cooper. It can't. I think you'd get a revolt in the fan base. I mean, with Potter, I think I genuinely think it would truly cause some full-on fractures in between the club and the fan base.
At
Full
the hierarchy too,
Mhm.
like directly at Bloom and Barber.
They would
and-
lose the fans.
Yeah. They
Which is
particular-
unheard of, right? Like,
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you believe we're having a conversation, but where you can consider the fans losing faith in Tony Bloom? That's how bad of an appointment.
It takes years to build a reputation and moments to break it, and this would be that. And that would be a horrible shame to ruin that legacy. But
And Cooper too.
I don't. Obviously, Cooper
On a different
less
level.
so, but more. I think it would be seen as like, God, this feels like a backward step for the club.
I think that's what people were asking me about. Well, like clearly not happy about Cooper. Why are you not happy? Because it is just a categorical downgrade on what we had, and we let it go. And that's what I can't get over. Right? Is that there's going to be a direct comparison between De Zerbi and this next coach, because as mutual as it is, like you could have patched that up and you could have continued. So it needs to be on that same level for me. You need to have the same classification of a coach. I just don't have Cooper there. And I haven't seen enough, but his record at Forest and other teams would lead me to believe that he's not on that level that we would maybe expect.
And that's where you just want to take a random punt on some other bloke at this point. You're just like, yeah, just give me a mystery box. I don't. At least I've got some hope with that. I tell you what would be there is a scenario that's worse than Potter.
Us.
Yeah.
Us running it. The Together BHA coach.
Twitch manages Brighton. Yeah, we just crowdsource everything. There is a scenario in an alternate universe that plays out in this way. Man United decide to keep Eric Ten Hag. Gareth Southgate decides to step down from the England job. See where this is going.
Yep.
Quite a malleable coach, isn't he? Quite a malleable coach. He'd probably do what Bloom and Barber says. Doesn't have that tippity top tier reputation, but he's respected by many.
And he bleeds red and blue, which would be an equal revolt.
That is, for me, there's nothing worse than that. There's nothing worse than that.
I agree. I would take Potter and Cooper together.
I'd take
Crowdsourcing
Bruno
their
as
brain.
manager over Southgate.
Yeah. So
Right,
would
so we need to wrap this up quick before the Euros finish.
I. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, get it done.
But that's I guess that's probably the last question of the podcast to aim at you guys. Do you think it's been a marathon? It always is these finales, but do you think that this managerial hunt, despite the vaunted list of thousands of managers around the world that we know all about and have on speed dial, do you think that the McKenna not working out, do you think that we now are going to sit tight until the end of the Euros to see where managerial appointments shake out there? Because there is bound to be a second merry-go-round. There definitely is. Like, that part is just true. Always is after a major tournament. Do you think that we sit tight until mid-July?
No.
Or do you think that we have someone in the next 2 weeks, say?
Yeah, has to be the next 2 weeks. I think you're not going to see any sort of national managers go straight into a club position, are you? Or even that sort of merry-go-round or anything like that. I think it needs to be done ASAP to give a full preseason. You wait until mid-July. You start, 10th, 11th of August? Go off to Japan on the 25th of July? Like, it needs to be. Yeah, needs to be soon. What about you?
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. Let's not piss about and wait.
I wonder if you just went left field on us and went,
no,
wait
absolutely not. Like, if do you know what? If the Euros were finishing June 14th, I'd say yeah, but they're not. They're not finishing until mid-July. Like, it'd be insane. Like, and for me, the biggest thing that stands out, and I've been thinking this in the back of my head, like trying not to be too doomerish, but like there are a lot of football clubs that need to sell football players before June 30th. Like, we need to figure our shit out because there are some bargains to be had there, and we have a lot of money to spend compared to these guys. Like, there is a lot of players that we could get for outrageously low prices if we get the manager in, and it's a good one, or at least not a bad one. Like, and we get one in, and these people are excited to at least play for this guy. Like, we are one of those teams in the Premier League that are primed to swoop up a couple of these like talented players from sale desperate teams, right? Like, from your, and it goes from your Chelseas to your Leicesters, right? Like, from the top boys that need to sell some to the ones that are just coming up and they need to sell some, and everything in between, and Leeds that didn't go up, right? Like, they have to sell some. Like, there's players everywhere that, like, we will miss out on all of them if we don't get our act together in the next week or two and figure it out.
It's not just that as well, and I know we got to go here, but this is not a league this coming year where you get to like mess this up. You had the fodder teams in the league this year. We had fodder teams in the league. Luton, Sheffield United, absolute garbage. Burnley, absolute garbage as well. We don't have quite that coming into this next season, dependent on how it sort of nets out with the signings that they make. Like, you've got teams that have been here and done this many times before. In more recent history, I think bar Ipswich, and they've got the manager we wanted. So Everton will be a lot better without points deductions if they don't face them. You would expect Brentford to be a lot better. Wolves, I think are going to continue to be on the up. Fulham had great patches during the season. Bournemouth have got a really solid manager. Palace have got a solid manager. West Ham have now got a solid manager. Don't screw it up. We're not that high and mighty.
It's important, isn't it? Very important that we get someone that's actually going to make an impact straight away as well. Like I said, you can be dragged into those bottom five very easily. Ask Brentford, ask what was the other team down there? Like, even Everton, I know they mismanaged their finances, but like, even they found themselves down there eventually. So
Newcastle were in the Championship not that long ago. West Ham were in the Championship not that long ago.
It can happen.
Yep. I mean, I think if I'm looking at my bottom three as a prediction right now, like, Forest is in that.
Yep.
And then the rest of it, like, Southampton are in that if Martin chooses to play the football that he thinks he can play, because that's just going to end the same as Burnley, with probably about 8 to 10 points more on the board, simply because of Premier League know-how from a lot of the Saints players. But I mean, that's 34. I reckon I can see them hitting 30, 34 points if they choose to play at that.
Leicester are down there. Just lost their manager, need to sell, already got a points deduction on the way.
That's the last one. If they get the points deduction, they're effed. If they don't, somehow, if they weasel their way out of a points deduction, who knows? Like, they've just got so much, like, know-how.
But side note, though, if we finish 15th or lower, the manager's gone anyway.
Probably.
You don't keep that guy around.
Suppose it depends on the season, right? If you flip it to this season,
sure,
and you have the start of the season look like the end of this one, and you have the end of the season look very,
Does he
very
survive
good.
with that at the start? I don't know if you survive.
You end on an up, and all of a sudden you feel a little bit rosier, don't you?
One win in the first 10. Get out, mate. You're done.
It took Hoppier. Hoppier had to resign, remember? Like, Bloom didn't fire him. Like, Hoppier had to resign for that to happen, remember? Like, so he's nothing if not patient on the pitch. Maybe not off it. But
We just got a lot. I hope the next time we talk on this podcast, we've brought in someone where we can be confident and just be like, you know what, this is going to be a guy that we can see being here for a while, plays attractive football from what we've seen, and this is a guy that is going to come in and do a great job for this team. And now let's go and spend some money. Like, that's the conversation I want to move on to. Right now, we're in this really weird sort of limbic state of just like, oh, the one we wanted's gone. Now we have to get some shit muncher and just hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, in terms of that, our next podcast, now it's the summer, will inevitably be the first weekend after we appoint a manager. I think it's pretty safe to say, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 of us, we will do a pod on that right after that breaks, and that will be it. Like, we'll go from there after that, depending on what happens throughout the summer. As always, we could have 2 months off. Could be a shit show. Who knows? So yeah, this has been an absolute beast. 2 hours, fellas. Good work.
Huge.
Yeah, mental. But we will be back whenever a manager's appointed. And let's hope it's well, as BHA 10MK says, it's not so depressing and underwhelming when it happens. Because we're in a good spot right now. So have a good summer, everybody. Let's hope we get a really nice Euros tournament. And we will be back soon, I hope.
When we have a manager. Yeah.
God. Smoke, the white smoke rises from Falmer.